Finesse dribbling has been a lot more accessible since version 4 of eFootball, and I think it is very underused because I barely see people using it, yet it can give you a lot of advantages. Here comes Peppa. Welcome everybody! Today I will show you the basics as well as 6 tricks about finesse dribbling that you can use to improve your gameplay. Most of them are pretty easy to execute. It's mostly about positional awareness and timing, so don't be afraid, it won't take you long to learn this. Let's start with the very basics. Finesse dribbling is a different way of dribbling where your player keeps the ball a lot closer. You do it by holding L2 or whatever you have it assigned to, and then just use the left stick to move. In my opinion, the biggest advantage is that you can move backwards without having to turn backwards. Let's say you need to evade an opposing player and move backwards. Without finesse dribble, you have to turn around, which gives you a horrible angle to pass forward. By using finesse dribble, your player moves backwards but doesn't turn, allowing you to keep a good angle for passing forward or even finishing. Now let's head to specific situations in the game where you can use finesse dribble. And we start with what I just talked about. Number 1, the pullback. Pulling the ball backwards allows you to evade your opponent's tackles. As you can see here, it works when your opponent is running at you, or when an opponent comes directly from the side, or when an opponent approaches you from behind. Basically, it's all about timing. I chose these 3 clips because they're all a little different. This is about the distance where I would start pulling the ball back. But note, and this goes for everything, it's always a bit different because every player has a different model and speed at which he approaches you. So all I did here was pulling the ball back and then sprinting to the side. After you have started pulling the ball back, you have 3 options. The first one, which is what I did here, you quickly start sprinting to the side once the pullback animation begins. The second one would be to let the pullback animation finish and then sprint to the side. This will increase the distance between you and the approaching opponent. So if you feel like the opponent's player is too close, don't immediately sprint mid pullback, but at the end of it. The third option would be to just do a second pullback. That's it. Now what to do when your opponent approaches you directly from the side. This here is about the distance where I would start my input, but as said before, it's variable. But don't worry, you will quickly develop a feeling for this after trying it a couple of times. Then the opponent's player moves past you and you have 2 options again. Number 1, when the opponent's player is stuck in a tackle or any other animation, you can just run past him and that's it. Number 2, and that's what happened here, when you feel like your opponent's player is not stuck in an animation but close to you and still a threat, then I would just do an additional single finesse touch backwards and then start running. Now for the last pullback, you probably noticed that the animation was a bit different. There's something else happening before the actual pullback. If you are running quite fast and then attempting a pullback, the player won't do it immediately but use this animation instead. I won't pretend to know how fast you have to be for this extra animation to kick in because quite frankly I don't know. The animation can be an advantage though, because if you look here, my player positions himself in a way that even if I messed up the timing and the other player would be closer to the ball, he can't immediately take it because the body of my player is in between. Since the window in which the pullback works against players from behind is not very tight, the animation shouldn't work against you, at least from my experience. This is about the distance where you can pull back and the opponent will run past you. Let's move to another use of finesse dribble, in my opinion the most important one, and that's actually a 2-in-1. Number 2, changing the angle of passes and also stalling the game for the recipient of the pass to cover ground. This is a bit less about timing, but more about game sense. Looking at this situation here, there isn't really any good opportunity for me. After just pulling the ball into empty space a little, I suddenly have a great passing opportunity. Now you probably wonder why Musiala was all alone all of a sudden. I don't know this for sure, so take it with a grain of salt, but I have often observed that when you pull the ball back the AI gets confused. But let's look at another clip which also shows why the angle is so important. Here, I could probably through ball to Messi and he would get the ball, but it would be very inefficient. The reason is because the ball would come directly from the side of Messi, the travel speed of the ball is limited. Because if it was too fast, Messi couldn't reach the ball, and if it was too slow, the opponent might intercept it. This angle, however, allows the pass to travel faster, which means it can be played into the space Messi is running to, which then means he receives it a lot later. This is good because off the ball, you are a lot faster than on the ball, meaning you can cover more ground this way. And again, and this is what I mean by AI secret exposed in the title, the AI completely messes up. Here, Messi is still perfectly marked. He's way faster than his opponent because he is 2009 Messi, but he's still being marked and being chased. As soon as I pull the ball backwards and the player supposed to mark Messi is on the same height as the ball or even behind it, he just stops keeping up. He's like, good luck guys, I'm going home, see you Monday. Which ultimately results in an easy chance for me because the other AI defender then moves towards Messi, leaving Makai all alone. And you don't leave Makai alone ever. This, and not only this, makes the pullback passing angle change combined with stalling the game very powerful. You can also use it for simple outside overlaps, as most players will defend aggressively and leave a gap for the overlapping player. The AI sometimes just seems to have problems coping with finesse dribbling. Here, there are 5 people swarming and surrounding FINESSE DRIBBLE, but I still almost got the miracle pass through. Let's move to number 3, the drag back. You probably know the drag back feint, which is this one here. It's pretty useful, but has one little disadvantage. At this very point of the animation, your player needs a little moment to get back to the ball. If there was another opponent nearby, he would just take it. With finesse dribble, you can also sort of do a drag back, but without this. In a situation like here, where you have the ball on the wrong foot and your position is kinda okay, but not really what you wish for, you can easily pull the ball back and then south, which puts you in a prime position for a shot. If I did the regular drag back feint here, Roberto Carlos probably would have taken the ball from me. Depending on where the opponent's defenders are, you can either do a finesse touch south, a normal touch, or even sprint and then shoot. How did it not go in, by the way? If you're familiar with this, you can also chain a knock-on finesse shot after the finesse pullback. Works with and without soul control, by the way. Next up is number 4, the side pull into sprint. This one is all about timing again. Basically, you finesse dribble to the side to bait a tackle. Then you evade it by sprinting into a different direction. It's mechanically pretty simple, the timing is what matters. As I've said before, it's highly variable, but this is about the distance where I would perform the last touch that baits the opponent's player. One important thing to know is that you can, like I did here, immediately press sprint and the second direction as soon as the last finesse dribble animation starts. This way, as you can see here, the ball will not go all the way through to the other leg, but the animation will be interrupted and the ball will be pulled to the other side earlier. The opponent's player, however, acts like the ball is still going to the other leg and tackles into nowhere. The principle of this is always the same. Finesse dribble into one direction to bait, and as soon as you think the opponent is close enough to tackle, sprint into the direction you want to go. A variation of this is number 5, the stop side pull. Excuse me for these names, I couldn't think of anything better. Here, we also let opponents just run or tackle into nowhere, but instead of sprinting, we only do a little finesse touch to the side. As I said in the beginning, I don't really know how fast you have to be for it to kick in. However, it shouldn't really matter for you because if you get this animation, you can just do it as shown here, but if you wouldn't and you get an instant pull instead, in my opinion, the opponent's player would still not get the ball in most cases. There is a way to trigger an animation like that though, which you can also use for dribbling in general, but also for finesse dribbling. It's the one your player does when you keep holding sprint but have the left stick at neutral. See how I can almost always reproduce it here? It doesn't work 100% of the time though. Sometimes the game goes for a different animation, which is this one. The side pull after it should still work though. You can also vary your timing a little bit by this by stopping to sprint, letting the player run a bit further, but then pressing sprint again to trigger the animation. Then after this animation, it's just a normal finesse dribble to whatever side you want to go. The last point, number 6, instant finesse touches. This one is actually super easy. All you have to do is hold L2 and the direction you want to go before receiving a pass. Your player will then perform a finesse touch as his first touch. You can use this to your advantage. Here, for example, I pull the ball a bit backwards in the opposing direction of the defender, which grants me just enough space to immediately sprint past him because he's now too far away. Another way to use this, for example, is if you are anywhere near the end of the pitch and want to avoid that your first touch lets the ball bounce outside. The reason why this works is not only because finesse touches are closer to the feet, it's also because your player never faces backwards, but depending on where you stand, either inwards or directly towards the goal. Speaking of directly facing the goal, this is another advantage you can use, because if you do a finesse touch as a first touch, you put yourself into a better position for either a pass forward or a shot as you are facing the goal. As a little extra, I didn't want this to be an own point because I rarely use it myself and I don't really know if it's actually useful, to be honest. If you sprint and hold the finesse dribble button while doing so, you can always just release sprint shortly and your player will immediately tight dribble. And if you like, you can also do small finesse touches in between. I feel like this can make you pretty unpredictable because in this stance where you have the ball close, it's easier for you to change direction, stall a bit more, or do whatever else you have in mind. Another extra thing, which I have only tested against the AI so far, is this move. You do a normal touch, not a finesse touch, right into your opponent, who then thinks he can take the ball, but you immediately pull it back. Then do one normal touch to the side and then sprint away. I think that this is a move that requires not only great anticipation, but also a player with high ball touching frequency. I am not sure how reliable it is against a good opponent, but I thought I'd show you anyway. That's it, folks. I hope this tutorial helped you. Let me know if you liked this video. I'd love if you subscribed, liked, or commented. Until then, guys, take it easy. Shaka!